She played the part of the foolish, trusting wife, while secretly planning his downfall. This is how one woman used her brains to destroy the man who broke her heart. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of brilliant revenge. When I finally stood in the empty shell of the house he bought for his mistress, my house, bought with my inheritance money from my parents, I didn't feel sadness. I felt the cold, clean satisfaction of a perfectly executed plan. My husband, Tom, thought he was so clever, so slick, stealing from me in plain sight to build his secret little world. He had no idea I was a much better architect of ruin than he ever was. You're about to hear how I discovered his betrayal. But if you knew the one tiny, arrogant mistake he made, the one loose thread he left for me to pull, you'd understand why they say payback is a bitch. And honey, for one glorious year, I was the queen of them all. My name is Clara, and I was, for 15 years, the perfect, trusting wife. Too trusting. When my parents passed away 2 years ago and left me a substantial inheritance, I was devastated. Tom was my rock. He held me while I cried. He managed the funeral arrangements. He handled the lawyers. And then he came to me with an idea. "Honey," he said, his voice full of feigned sincerity, "we shouldn't just let this money sit in a bank. We should make it work for us, for our future." His plan was simple and sounded smart. We would use a large portion of the inheritance to buy an investment property, a nice house in an up-and-coming neighborhood on the other side of town. We'd rent it out, he said, create a passive income stream for our retirement. He would handle everything, finding the property, the paperwork, managing the tenants. I was still drowning in grief, and the thought of dealing with real estate was overwhelming. I gratefully agreed, signing the papers he put in front of me without a second glance. That was my first mistake. For a year, the lie was seamless. The rental income appeared in our joint account every month like clockwork, a small, steady amount. Tom explained the rest was going towards maintenance, taxes, and management fees. He was often over at the rental property, he'd say, fixing a leaky faucet or meeting with the tenants. He seemed busier, more distant, but I chalked it up to the stress of being a landlord. I was a fool. What I thought was stress was actually excitement. He wasn't a landlord. He was living a double life. The first thread I pulled was a credit card statement. It was an account I rarely looked at, but a charge for a high-end designer furniture store caught my eye. It was for several $1,000s. I asked him about it casually over dinner. "Oh, that," he said, not missing a beat. "That was for the tenants. Their sofa was ruined in a small plumbing leak. The insurance covered it. I just had to put it on my card first." It sounded plausible. But something about his eyes, a quick, nervous flicker, set my own internal alarm bells ringing. The next day, while he was at work, I did something I'd never done before. I went through his briefcase, and there, tucked away in a side pocket, I found it. A second cell phone. A secret phone. My hands trembled as I turned it on. It wasn't password protected. That was his second mistake. His arrogance. He never dreamed his trusting, simple wife would ever suspect him. The phone was a chronicle of his betrayal. Texts, hundreds of them, to a woman named Sophie. They were filled with declarations of love, with plans for their future, with jokes about me, his boring, clueless wife. And then there were the photos of them together, in my house, the house I had bought with my parents' money, photos of them in the beautiful new bedroom, on the designer sofa I had just paid for. They weren't renting it out. They were living in it. It was their love nest. The pain was a physical thing. It knocked the air from my lungs, left me dizzy, nauseous. I sat on my kitchen floor for an hour, just staring at that phone, watching my 15-year marriage crumble into dust. The grief, the shock, it was overwhelming. But then it was replaced by something else, a cold, hard, clarifying rage. He hadn't just cheated on me. He had stolen from me, from my dead parents. He had used my grief and my trust to finance his affair, to build a secret life behind my back. And he thought he would get away with it. I stood up, my mind clear, my purpose set. I wasn't going to cry, I wasn't going to scream, I was going to get even. No, I was going to do better than even. I was going to leave him with absolutely nothing. I put the secret phone back in his briefcase, exactly where I found it. I deleted the search history on my computer. I made him dinner, just like always. I smiled and asked about his day. He had no idea that the woman sitting across the table from him was no longer his wife. She was his enemy, quietly planning the complete and total demolition of his life. The hardest role I've ever had to play was that of the loving wife to a man whose betrayal was a physical nausea in my gut. For the next month, I was a ghost in my own home, an actress giving the performance of a lifetime. I smiled when Tom came home from work. I asked about his day. I made his favorite meals. I even feigned interest in his boring stories about office politics. And all the while, behind my placid smile, I was a cold, calculating general, mapping out the complete and utter destruction of his world. He was disgustingly easy to fool. My seeming return to normalcy, after a few days of what he probably wrote off as wifely moodiness, made him comfortable. Arrogant. He left his secret phone lying around. He left bank statements on his desk. He believed his dutiful, trusting Clara was back, and his carelessness became my greatest weapon. Every night, after he fell asleep, my real work began. I became a creature of the shadows in my own house. I'd photograph every incriminating text on his secret phone, every hotel receipt, every credit card statement that showed a charge for a romantic dinner for two that I hadn't attended. I meticulously documented the trail of my inheritance money, tracing it from my account to his, and then to the purchase of that house, their house. My second step was to find a lawyer. I couldn't just use our family lawyer. He was too close to Tom. I needed a shark. I found her online, a woman named Jessica Davenport. A bitter irony, using the name of another villain from a past life I once imagined, known for being the most ruthless divorce attorney in the state, specializing in cases of financial fraud within a marriage. Our first meeting was in a discreet coffee shop far from my neighborhood. I laid out everything for her. The story of my inheritance, the fraudulent investment property, the copies of the texts, the photos. I presented it not as a heartbroken wife, but as a client with a clear objective. Ms. Davenport listened, her eyes sharp and intelligent, a slow, predatory smile growing on her face as she looked at the mountain of evidence I had compiled. "Mrs. Miller," she said when I was done, her voice a purr, "this isn't just a divorce case. This is a slaughter. We're not just going to get your money back. We're going to leave him with absolutely nothing, and we're going to do it in a way that ensures his little girlfriend, Sophie, runs for the hills." Her plan was brilliant and cruel, and I loved every second of it. We wouldn't confront him yet. We would let him walk deeper into the trap. The first step was to secure the assets. Using the power of attorney my parents had given me over their estate, Ms. Davenport's team discovered that the way Tom had structured the transfer of my inheritance into his name was legally questionable, borderline fraudulent. We had grounds to freeze not just the Love Nest house, but all his personal and business accounts, claiming they were commingled with stolen funds. But we didn't do it yet. Patience, Clara, Ms. Davenport had advised. Let him get comfortable. Let him think he's gotten away with it. The fall is so much harder when you're standing on top of the world. So I played my part. I even suggested we go on a second honeymoon. "Oh, Tom," I'd said one evening, my voice full of fake adoration. "We've been so stressed lately. Let's go away, just the two of us, to that little island in the Caribbean we always talked about." He was thrilled. It was the perfect cover for him to spend more time with Sophie, making arrangements for his upcoming business trip, a trip I knew he was planning with her. While he was busy booking his romantic getaway with his mistress, I was busy with Ms. Davenport, preparing the legal documents that would detonate his life. The key to my revenge, I realized, wasn't just taking back my money. It was taking back my power. It was about showing this man, who saw me as a simple, trusting fool, that I was, in fact, his superior in every way, intellectually, strategically, and morally. My investigation wasn't just financial. I started digging into Sophie. Who was this woman who had helped my husband betray me? Using the information from the secret phone, I found her social media profiles, her old blog, her online footprint. She was a life coach and influencer, a woman who peddled empty self-help platitudes while living off the money my parents had worked their entire lives for. And I discovered her weakness, her desperate, all-consuming need for public validation. She was planning to launch her own brand, a series of wellness retreats, and she was using Tom and my money as her silent, secret investor. The stage was being set for a beautiful, multi-layered destruction. I had the legal power to freeze his assets, and I had the personal information to destroy her reputation. 1 week before they were supposed to leave for their separate trips, his to a business conference, hers to a yoga retreat, I knew it was time. I had every piece of evidence I needed. Every text message, every bank statement, every deceitful email. I had the affidavits from the furniture store, from the real estate agent who sold them the house. I had everything. The trap was set. The legal documents were filed and ready to be served. My payback wasn't just going to leave him with nothing, it was going to be a public spectacle, orchestrated to cause maximum damage to both him and his mistress. He thought he was about to go on a romantic trip to paradise. He had no idea he was about to take a one-way trip to hell. And I was the one who had just stamped his ticket. The day they were supposed to leave for their tropical paradise, I orchestrated their descent into hell. It began at 8:00 a.m. sharp. Tom was whistling in the shower, his suitcase packed and waiting by the door, full of new resort wear he'd bought with my money. That's when the doorbell rang. It was a process server, a grim-faced man in a cheap suit, and he handed my husband the thickest, most terrifying stack of legal documents he had ever seen. I watched from the top of the stairs as the color drained from Tom's face. He ripped open the envelope. It was all there. The divorce filing, the lawsuit for fraud and misappropriation of inherited assets, and the crown jewel, the emergency court order freezing every single bank account, credit card, and asset tied to his name, including the Love Nest house, pending a full investigation. His whistling stopped. The only sound was the frantic, panicked rustle of paper in his trembling hands. At exactly 8:05 a.m., Phase 2 of my plan went live. I had compiled a neat little digital package, copies of the fraudulent transfers, screenshots of Sophie's hypocritical wellness posts juxtaposed with her lavish spending on Tom's dime, and an anonymous but detailed tip about her history as a consultant to wealthy, married men. I sent it all to a notorious online gossip columnist known for her vicious takedowns of social media influencers. By 9 o'clock a.m., the story was live. The headline was a thing of beauty. The toxic truth behind wellness influencer Sophie Lane is her Zen lifestyle funded by stolen family money? The article was brutal, filled with verifiable facts and delicious innuendo. It went viral almost instantly. I was still upstairs, sleeping in, when Tom finally stormed into our bedroom, his face a mask of purple rage and disbelief. "What is this, Clara?" he roared, waving the legal papers in his hand. "What have you done?" I sat up slowly, feigning a sleepy confusion. "Good morning, dear. What's all the shouting about?" "Don't you good morning me. My accounts are frozen. You're suing me? After everything I've done for you?" "For me, Tom," I said, my voice dangerously sweet. "Or to me. There's a difference." Just then, his secret phone, which he'd left on the nightstand, began to buzz incessantly. It was Sophie. He snatched it up. "What?" he barked into the phone. The colour, what little was left, drained completely from his face. "What do you mean it's everywhere? What article?" I watched as he listened, his eyes growing wider and wider with horror. He was listening to the sound of his mistress's career, her reputation, her entire public persona, being incinerated in real time. I have to go," he stammered into the phone, and hung up. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. He finally understood. This wasn't a coincidence. It was a coordinated surgical strike. "You," he whispered, his voice full of a new, dawning terror. "This was you. All of it." "Yes," I said, smiling, a real Samaritan this time. "Me, the boring, clueless wife. The one who was just supposed to sit quietly while you spent her parents' money on your little girlfriend. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? That was your biggest mistake, Tom. Not the cheating, not the stealing. Your biggest mistake was underestimating me." He didn't have the words. He just stood there, a man whose two worlds had just collided and exploded, leaving him standing in the rubble. He was legally paralyzed and socially radioactive. His mistress was now toxic waste. Their romantic getaway was cancelled. Their future was a smoking crater. "My payback," I said softly, getting out of bed and walking to my closet, "is leaving you with nothing. Not just nothing in your bank account, but nothing to hide behind. No more lies, no more secrets, just the pathetic, empty truth of who you really are." I pulled out my own pre-packed suitcase. "And now, if you'll excuse me," I said, walking past him towards the door, "I have my own trip to catch, a real one. I hear Paris is lovely this time of year." He just stared at me, his face a ruin. He had lost. Completely. I walked out of that house, leaving him there with the legal papers, the screaming notifications on his secret phone, and the shambles of the life he had built on my trust. I didn't look back. The past was a pile of ashes, and I had no intention of sifting through them. My new life was waiting. Paris wasn't an escape. It was a rebirth. For the first 2 weeks, I did nothing but walk. I walked until my feet ached, losing myself in the labyrinthine streets of Le Marais, sitting for hours in cafes with a book and a glass of wine, watching the effortlessly chic Parisians go by. The vengeful, calculating woman who had meticulously planned her husband's downfall seemed to recede, replaced by someone I hadn't met in 15 years. Myself. Clara. A woman with her own thoughts, her own desires, her own future. The initial savage satisfaction of my revenge had faded, leaving behind not emptiness, as I had feared, but a profound, quiet calm. I had proven my point. I had taken back what was mine. The rage that had fueled me was gone, and I found I didn't miss it. Ms. Davenport, my glorious shark of a lawyer, handled the rest from back home. The divorce was finalized with brutal efficiency. Tom, stripped of his assets and facing a potential lawsuit from Sophie for her investment in their brand, which had imploded spectacularly, was a broken man. He didn't contest a thing. I got my entire inheritance back, the Love Nest house, which I immediately put on the market, and a settlement that left him with little more than his own profound regret. He was, as the title of my story promised, left with nothing. I felt no pity, just a distant, clinical sense of an account being settled. My trip, which had started as a one-way ticket to Paris, became a year-long pilgrimage of self-discovery. I was no longer the timid wife who needed her husband's permission to buy a new dress. I was a single, financially independent woman in her 40s with a map of the world and a hunger to see it. From Paris, I went to Italy. I ate pasta in Rome, stared at Michelangelo's David in Florence until my neck ached, and learned to cook from a wonderful, stout nonna in a small Tuscan village. I learned that my own opinions were interesting, that my laughter was infectious, that I could navigate a foreign train station with a confidence I never knew I possessed. The Love Nest house sold. The money, combined with the rest of my inheritance, gave me an idea. The old Clara would have put it into a sensible, boring investment portfolio. The new Clara. She decided to invest in herself. I had always loved fashion, a passion Tom had dismissed as frivolous. Now, I decided to make it my business. While traveling through Thailand, I fell in love with the vibrant, beautiful textiles and the incredible skill of the local artisans. An idea sparked. I spent 6 months there, not as a tourist, but as a student. I learned about silk weaving, about natural dyes, about ethical sourcing. I built relationships with small, women-owned workshops. I started a small online boutique called Clara's Closet. I curated a collection of beautiful, ethically made clothing and accessories from artisans around the world whom I had met on my travels. It wasn't about getting rich. It was about passion, about creating something beautiful, something that told a story. And to my astonishment, it worked. My little boutique, fueled by my story, which I shared on the About Us page, a heavily redacted but powerful version of betrayal and rebirth, and my genuine passion, found an audience. Women my age, women who had been through their own heartbreaks, their own betrayals, responded to the authenticity of it. They didn't just buy my clothes, they bought into my story of empowerment. One day, I was on a video call with one of my suppliers, a talented young weaver from a small village in Vietnam. We were discussing a new design. "You seem so happy, Clara," she said. "So strong." "I am," I replied, a genuine smile spreading across my face. It took me a while to get here. My ex-husband, Tom, had thought my life was defined by him. His betrayal, I see now, wasn't the end of my story. It was the catalyst. He didn't destroy me. He inadvertently set me free. He had tried to steal my inheritance to build a secret world for himself, but in doing so, he had gifted me the entire world and the resources to build a new life, far more beautiful and fulfilling than anything he could have ever conceived. The payback wasn't just leaving him with nothing. The ultimate payback was what I had become without him. A successful, independent, and for the first time in a very long time, a truly, deeply happy woman. I had finally, truly come into my own inheritance. 5 years. That's how long it had been since I'd walked out of my old life, leaving Tom standing amidst the ruins of his. 5 years since I'd boarded that one-way flight to Paris with a single suitcase and a heart full of cold, surgical rage. That rage had long since dissipated, replaced by the warm, steady glow of a life I had built with my own 2 hands, on my own terms. My online boutique, Clara's Closet, had grown from a passionate side project into a thriving international brand. I spent my years traveling the world, not as a tourist, but as a businesswoman, an artist, a curator, finding beautiful, ethically made textiles and crafts, and sharing their stories with a community of women who, like me, valued authenticity and strength. I had apartments in Lisbon and Bangkok, but my true home was the world itself. I was happy, truly, deeply, unapologetically happy. The past, I had thought, was a foreign country I no longer had a passport for. And then, one afternoon in a cafe in my beloved Lisbon, the past walked in. I saw him before he saw me. Tom. He looked older, thinner. The arrogant, self-assured swagger was gone, replaced by a weary stoop in his shoulders. He was dressed in a suit that was clean, but didn't have the expensive cut he used to favor. He looked like just another tired, middle-aged man. The sight of him didn't spark anger or pain, or even a flicker of satisfaction. It sparked nothing, just a vague, clinical curiosity. He saw me, and for a moment he froze, his face a mask of shock and disbelief. He looked at me, at my relaxed posture, my confident smile as I chatted with a friend, my simple but elegant silk scarf, one of my own designs. He was seeing a woman he did not know, a woman who bore no resemblance to the timid, trusting wife he had so easily deceived. He hesitated, then slowly, humbly, approached my table. "Clara?" he asked, his voice a hoarse whisper. Is that really you?" "Hello, Tom," I said, my voice calm, even. There was no tremor, no anger, just the polite acknowledgement of a stranger from a long-ago life. "You look amazing," he stammered, his eyes full of a bewildered awe. "I read about your company, online. It's incredible, what you've built." "Thank you," I said simply. "I'm very proud of it." The silence between us was awkward, filled with the ghosts of everything he had done. He began, his gaze falling to the floor. "I know I have no right to ask you this, no right at all, but I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, Clara, for everything. I was a fool, a greedy, arrogant, cruel fool. I destroyed the best thing I ever had in my life for nothing. Sophie, she left me as soon as the money ran out, of course. I lost the house. I lost everything." He looked up, and for the first time I saw a flicker of genuine, soul-deep regret in his eyes. "I know I can't ask for your forgiveness. I wanted you to know that I know. I know what I lost." I listened to his confession, this speech I had once fantasized about hearing, and I felt a strange sense of detachment. His apology, his regret. It was all about him, his loss, his pain. It had nothing to do with me anymore. I was not a character in his sad story of regret. I was the protagonist of my own, much more interesting story. My payback, I realized in that moment, was never about destroying him. That was just a byproduct. My true revenge was becoming a woman whose happiness was so complete, so profound that his apology, his regret, his very existence was utterly irrelevant to it. He couldn't hurt me anymore, but he couldn't heal me either, because I had already healed myself. I gave him a small, polite smile, the kind of smile you give a stranger who has momentarily interrupted your day. "I'm glad you've had time to reflect, Tom," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I truly wish you well." And that was it. There was nothing more to say. There were no fireworks, no final satisfying confrontation, just a quiet, final closing of a book that had been finished long ago. He nodded, a look of sad understanding on his face, and walked away, a ghost fading back into a past I no longer inhabited. I turned back to my friend, took a sip of my wine, and continued our conversation about a new textile artist I had discovered in Morocco. Later that evening, I stood on my balcony, looking out at the glittering lights of Lisbon. The surprise I had prepared for him all those years ago wasn't just the legal papers or the public exposure of his mistress. The real surprise, the one that truly reminded him that mothers, that women, never forget, was this: my success, my peace, my joy. The life I had built, not from the ashes of my old one, but from the fertile ground of my own strength, my own talent, my own unbreakable will. He hadn't just lost an inheritance, he had lost a universe, and I had gained one.